Government itself is complex. You need to understand the 3 tiers of government. There's from the local level, the provincial level, and also the national level. And every one of those departments, and if you count them, the number of municipalities as an example, there's over 600 municipalities. And everyone seems to have their own sort of strategy. And I can tell you now, there's no cohesive strategy. If you look at the transformation that's happening in government today, it's a result of this dysfunctional way of doing business. We now have Trevor Manuel, they now figured out that they need some sort of a strategy to say, what is the end state of government? Where are we today? And do we have a view of this future? So one useful bit of information is sometimes to just go into Parliament and to listen. And then you can sit in the visitor side and you can listen to what has been said. And many a time I would approach, maybe at the provincial level, let's say it was in Cape Town, where I approached one of the MECs, and I said, you know, what can we do to offer? He said, well, I tell you what, why don't you come to Parliament and listen? So at the provincial level, I went in and listened, got all the necessary information, and then basically, having understood what their business was all about, what the issues are, and it was about housing, very fundamental. You know, how can we make a difference? And then you need to look at what are your own competencies. Where do you think you can make a difference? So one of the first things as a lesson or as an insight is to understand the broad-based market, to understand the politics, to understand the different agendas. And government, all don't think alike. You've got opposition, you've got different views, but the second most important thing is to understand the budget. How is the budget divided? Who are the key decision makers? What are their strategic plans? What are their short-term goals? What are their medium to long-term objectives? I think what small businesses need to understand, and I think they need to spend a lot of time, you need to understand those procurement processes, and I mean understand them and in detail. In the business that I'm in, fundamentally, if we go to market and we sort of tend to close a deal, and then it has to go to the process of at least getting the order and so on. Now, you're not allowed through that process to call on the procurement department and say, you know, when are you going to give me my order? Sometimes you've got to draw a fine line in terms of what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. Are you negatively influencing or inappropriately influencing? And that's a key word there. So the important thing is to understand the process. So what you tend to do is when you talk to a customer and you talk about, it's always about their pressures, it's all about their timelines, it's all about their incentives. So you will sit down with the person and say, please share with me what your thinking is about achieving the following objective. What are your timelines and how can I help you? Is there an urgency behind it? So when you tend to put a plan together to either share the solution, the product, the urgency, it is a timeline and a set of plans that is shared between yourself as well as the customer. And once you have that, and when you reach a stage where they agree to the solution, you've given them a proposal, they're going to take it to an executive committee, you need to understand the process of the decision-making process until it goes into procurement on the other side. So you have to plan up to that level. And you work with the customer to say, you know what, according to plan, you know, we're falling behind, looks like there's some delays on your side. Is there any way you can help? You know, so it's about finding innovative ways to fast-track the process. So the first lesson is understand the process, talk to the customer up front in the early stages before your proposal is given, understand the process, the decision-making processes, the influences, and where they could be potentially. If they have to take it to their exco and they need to understand the business case, can I help you with the business case?
Selling into government is expensive, there's no question about that. And the reason is the long timelines, the long delays. You've got to put very high caliber resources on a government pitch, and it's going to take months and in some cases years. And if you had to look at all of the costs associated with pitching against the revenues on that deal, although on the operation delivering that deal you may make a bit of money, if you put all the pre-work and the marketing that went into it, it's very often a break even to a loss. The difference is with government is that it's hard to get in, but once you're in, provided, as Clayton said, you're adding value, it's equally as hard to get out. You're there, they know you, you've done well, They don't want to look around all the time. So they prefer to be using the same people provided you do good service. But I need to distinguish between two types of government sales processes. The one is where they're inviting a product or a service. They go to tender. And they will send it to selected companies and they'll say, this is what we're looking for. That process is a very different approach in how you deal with that. It's very closed. We've got time which we'll enter into dialogue with you. After that, you cannot phone us, do not talk to us, fill in exactly what we want you to fill in the documentation, very little scope for creativity. They know how to handle that and they'll manage that. And that process takes time, but it's pretty much join the dots. And there, your fight is very much on things like price and all those things. The second type of pitch to government is around when you go to them with a product or a service or an offering which they didn't send a tender out. They didn't ask for it. You being proactive and going to them. That's a very different process. The individual you speak to may like that and say, this is what I'm looking for. But that person has very little capability to do anything about it. It's not, we didn't think about this. It's not in the budget. We don't know how to consider this. But I don't want you to go away. I want to keep talking to you. I've got to try and get this into the system somehow because we need it. So large corporate or businesses are a lot more flexible. If you take them a good idea, then they're able to do something with it. Even though it's out of budget cycle, there's always a slush fund that somebody's got somewhere to do stuff with. With government, if you're going up to them with something that's uninvited, as appealing as it is, it's going to be difficult to get it in. You have to wait budget cycles.
The big challenge that government has today is they do not have the skills. They look to institutions like the universities, the technicons, to help them develop a skill. But also, they're looking for people in the industry to partner with, so that they can go into partnership in the way they deliver. I think you mentioned delivery of the solution. It's one thing to sell something, but it's something else to deliver. So you need to either, if you're an entrepreneur going into business, you've got to try and find a niche. You need to understand that market.